With S-curve scoliosis, the body obviously has two curvatures to deal with, and you might be suffering from back pain. So in this video, I want to show you some of my favorite go-to yoga poses for S-curve scoliosis that are not only easy to do, but that will also help you to relieve some of that back pain. So before we get started, let's just see how it feels to be you, to be in your body right now. So just come into a standing position without kind of trying too hard, and just see how you feel right now. How does your back feel? Is there any sensation right now? How do your shoulders feel? How do your hips feel? Are there any sensations in your knees? Just so we've got something that we compare it to afterwards, after the practice. So all that you need for this practice today is a chair, and we're going to start with a lovely pose called the half downward dog. And I absolutely love this one because you can pretty much do this anywhere. You don't need to be on a yoga mat. You don't even need the chair. You could do this at your kitchen sink, for example, or anywhere really where you could bring your hands onto something that is about hip height. So let's get started with this, and obviously we want to also think about how we can adjust this for our S-curve scoliosis. But the reason why I love this one is because it's going to create some length, and it's a fabulous one to relieve from back pain. So first of all, what is important to do is we're going to bring the hands onto the back of the chair just for a little bit of support. So you don't want to kind of fully lean onto this, but just lightly touching the chair. And then we're just going to take a few steps back. And what is important here is that you allow for your thighs to move back as well, so that you're moving from your hips and you're not rounding into the spine. So this is key. This is very, very important for this pose. So as I said, we're just going to walk a few steps back. We're thinking about the thighs moving back here. So again, I'm just going to walk a few steps back and checking that I'm moving my thighs back. So I'm actually lengthening through my tailbone backwards. So you can obviously go for as far as you want here. And again, the purpose is to create a little bit of traction. So while I have my hands here, I'm not kind of collapsing into this. So that's not the purpose of this. Just resting my hands. And then I'm thinking about lengthening the crown of the head forwards and my tailbone into the opposite direction. And I've actually got my knees slightly bent here because I don't want to hang out into my knee joints. And there is a strong link between hypermobility and scoliosis. But I want to do this actively, right? So this is why I've got my knees slightly bent. And I'm thinking about sending my hips back. I could probably move a tiny little bit further back and then lengthening through the crown of the head. So I'm just going to think about inhaling and exhaling, lengthening even more. So one more breath in and one more breath out, lengthening even more. And then to come out, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to walk back and then lifting the chest to come all the way up. Good. So now we can also think about how we can adjust this a little bit more for our S-curve scoliosis. So remember what we want to do. We want to create more space on the concave side of our lumbar curve and the concave side of our thoracic. So for me, as a right thoracic, left lumbar curve, I'm going to think about creating that space on the right side of my waist and the left side of my thoracic. So when I get into the pose, I'm doing this a little bit quicker now, I'm now thinking about sending my right sitting bone a little bit further back. And that might look like I'm moving my hips slightly over to the left with the purpose of creating a bit more space here. Right? At the same time, I can also move the left corner of my chair forwards because I want to reach through my left arm at the same time. And I'm just going to do this for a couple of breaths just to see how this feels and to allow the breath to expand into those areas. And then important, we always want to come back to symmetry afterwards. Lengthening again, crown of the head and tailbone. And then bringing yourself all the way up from here. Good, so after our elongation, let's come back to our standing posture and let's give those shoulders a nice little roll. So we're going to bring the shoulders up towards the ears, back and down, just a couple of times, just to softening up a little bit. So we're going to do just a little bit of movement. Good, and then release. Good, and then just bring your arms slightly out to the side, and we're just going to see how it feels to externally rotate the arms. So we're opening the palms out and then internally rotating. So we externally rotate and internally rotate. Good, and just notice what this does to your shoulders, right? If we internally rotate, the shoulders start to roll forwards. If we externally rotate, there is a little bit more space here. Now this is very important and useful to know, because with a right thoracic curve, you might have that right shoulder that wants to roll forwards. So we can use this information and think about, can we open up? Can we externally rotate maybe a little bit more through that right side and create that space at the front of the shoulder? Good. And you can try this on the other side. Obviously, most of the time this is already externally rotated. So how does it feel to go inwards? And this is just for you to feel. I don't want you to kind of obviously now stand in this position with one arm in and one arm out. That's going to be really awkward. It's about feeling how this feels in your body and how we can create a little bit more space. Good. Let's release the shoulders. One more time. Good. And then we're going to think about creating a little bit more movement and length through the sides of the body. So we're just going to reach one arm up, lengthening through the side, and then release. And then we're going to reach the other arm up, lengthening through the other side. Good. So we're going to keep going with this, but we're going to think about our S-curve and how we can use this movement to help our S-curve scoliosis. So if I reach up through the right side, I don't really want to bend more into my right thoracic because that's already doing that. But I do want to think about lengthening through my right waist a little bit more. So I might be holding back a little bit with the arm, but I'm kind of thinking about just slightly coming over and creating that space on the right side of the waist. And then here on the other side, I don't want to stretch into the waist even more, but I do want to create that space into the thoracic. Good. Lovely. Good. And then let's come into mountain pose. If you're practicing yoga, you might be familiar with this. It's simply standing strong on your feet. And just close your eyes for a moment and just notice how you feel right now, just after these few very simple movements. Just noticing if you can feel a difference between how you're feeling right now and how you felt at the beginning of the practice. So what we've done here is we've elongated the spine and we've created a little bit more mobility, which can really be beneficial when you're dealing with pain. But we obviously also need to now be able to support this newfound length and this newfound mobility. And for this, it's really important that we start to strengthen our core. So in this next video, I'm going to go through a simple Pilates routine that you can do to strengthen your core and stay pain-free in the long term.